Welcome to another episode of the Align Life, the Goddess Life, where we dive into living life fully aligned, mind, body, and spirit, at peace and unbothered. This is our last episode of the year as we will be taking the next few weeks off to enjoy these holidays, spend some time with our family, and take a much needed break to prepare for the energy that 2025 is going to bring us. I am super excited to sit here with you all today, especially with the topic that we're going to be touching on, because we're going to be talking about connecting with intuition, clearing confusion, and moving through this energy. I know for myself, there has been some energy that I've had some issues kind of like, I don't want to say coming to terms with, but it's been more so like holding me down and I need to move through. And I know Ashley was just telling me that she's been feeling the same thing. So I'm excited to dive into this. Good morning, Ashley. Thank you for joining me.
Good morning. I am excited for this topic.
Yes, me too. It was, we were talking about what we were going to talk about today, and I was like, hey, let's draw a card from this deck. And as we were talking about not being able to get fully done with tasks, and there's just this energy that is, it's not really like muddy or
Or
stagnant. It's almost like
it's clumpy.
yes, it's very clumpy. And the card that I picked was intuition, and we'll go into that too. But how has this energy been showing up for you?
I am finally coming out of burnout. I got out of the army like 3 years ago now. Fact check myself for a moment and do quick math. Yeah, three years ago now. Which is wild to me because time has been simultaneously existing and not existing in my perception of life. um, where you just kind of like fall off and you're just kind of going through the motions, but you're not fully there. Um,
Yes.
so it kind of feels like I'm bobbing. It's alternating between going under the water and coming back up for air. Um, and lately I've started asking myself, what are you choosing? Because I was getting so frustrated because everything was just so stagnant and stuck. And I'm like, I am really tired of this. This is boring. I don't like this. I'm not choosing this anymore. And so I started really like looking at, what are you choosing right now? And like in real time, helping me like be present and make the choices that I needed to make to move the energy, because as clumpy as it is, it tends to pile. It's like you're great at washing the laundry, but you're not so great at putting it up. And I'm speaking to myself, not calling anyone out, and then eventually, next thing you know, you have 3, 4 loads of laundry just piled up on your bed, taking over your life. And it
Not
just
me
feels
looking at the remnants of like socks on my bed from me putting my laundry away this morning.
right. But like that is like the perfect analogy for this clumpy energy, because if we don't put intention to it and start moving it, then it just starts to pile up. And the higher it piles, the more mountains, molehills feel like mountains, right?
Yes, absolutely they do. I've noticed this also. I've heard a lot of people, talking about work and talking about jobs, and there's been so much of it's almost like a lack of motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's just not a full drive to get to the end result right now. It's very, very interesting. And I like that word that you use, clumpy, because it's very, very clumpy. And it is this, you have to get to the other side of it. You know that it's important and it kind of sits in your brain. And we know we have to move through it, but there's so many other things going on in our lives that we tend to focus on those pieces more than we're focusing on what's right in front of us. We're waiting for the next thing to happen. And I didn't even think about it that way, but now that I'm talking about it, we've removed ourselves from this present idea And we're in this, okay, well, this is about to happen. This is about to happen. I'm going to have to do this at some point. It's all something right in the future instead of being here and being clear in our awareness now.
It's living through binoculars.
Yes, yes. Especially at Christmas and Yule time, we're all waiting for these holidays to come through and we're like, okay, well, when am I going to be able to actually get there? And we all have all of this stuff in our houses and we're just trying to make it through. It's an interesting thing.
Yeah. And as I was listening to you, I feel like there's this massive recalibration going on, right? Where what we used to think we wanted to move towards isn't necessarily true for us anymore. And, this is the perfect time to start really reevaluating that. What are you choosing? What are you wanting to choose? And is that lack of motivation because it's just not the direction that you need to go anymore? um, and really finding that passion to help kind of reignite that fire and rekindle it.
Oh, yes. And that goes back also to people kind of feeling stuck in their job cycles and not feeling the motivation to get up and do things, as that we absolutely need to survive, not just, the laundry. Falling back in love with, we talk a lot in trauma, especially you and I, about falling back in love with the self.
Hmm.
And it is just as important when we are falling back in love with ourselves for us to learn how to fall back in love with the life that we're leading and the choices that we have made and understand why we've made those choices and where they're going to take us in the future. Now, I know we're talking about awareness, but we can still have appreciation where things will eventually go and find our happiness here in the present too.
Well, I think that now, especially in this winter time, we really need to look back at, what our needs and values are, the core foundation of who we are as we're learning to fall back in love with that, right? Because the last 4 years have been a roller coaster ride. You are not
Yes.
the same person you were pre-2020 pandemic. You're not. And it's important to have that time and space set aside to really check back in with yourself and figure out, what is it that I need? What is it that I value? And I mean, I know that this is like probably confirmation bias because this has been hot on my brain lately, especially with my 2025 plan. But
Oh,
like
yeah.
it's such a fundamental piece, and when we don't meet those needs and those values go unmet, we lack that motivation, we lack that drive, we start fulfilling those needs in subconscious ways that tend to be problematic, right?
Yeah.
So it's important to really tap back into that inner voice because that's the core of what your intuition is that voice within yourself that gives you the direction, that gives you the guidance, that points to north.
Yes. Yes. And the intuition is so important in that forward motion. Like you just said, it points to north. It's our soul compass. It is a huge part of it. Our soul compass has a few other components, but it is what our true north ultimately is. There's actually a meditation that we have up on the Spotify. It's one of our earlier episodes. I may, go back in before the end of the year and revamp that, give it a little bit of our new little spin on it and repost it because finding your true north and really settling into that intuition gives you it helps clear out this clumpy energy and it gives you a solid voice to listen to once you can get through those layers. We talk about unresolved trauma a lot in our segment and that tends to overpower our intuitive voice. So when we're working towards moving to that true north and really focusing on that inner awareness, that we're able to see and move through a lot of those unresolved issues that we're going through, which are really high right now during the holidays for some people. There are people who are having to go visit family that they may not want to visit, or family that they feel uncomfortable around, or maybe they feel this clumpiness because they're more alone than they were at this time of year. And that tends to overshadow the the work we've already done and where that's taking us.
I have this mental image of like being put through the spin cycle. And if you've ever like held an actual compass and you spin around really fast, you know that it takes a few seconds for that compass to stop spinning with you and come back and settle down and go back to north and just stay there steadily.
Yes, yes, it
Because,
is. It can
with the
be really difficult to navigate when your compass is spinning that quickly.
yeah, and if you're kind of like lost without that sense of direction and you're just quickly changing directions and kind of spinning around trying to find your way, which is a very, very human behavior, right? We don't, when you suddenly realize that you don't know where you are, what do? We spin around and we start looking at our surroundings, don't we? And,
Yes.
that kind of throws our compass off kilter for a moment, and we got to just kind of pause and give it a moment before it can settle back in and give us that sense of direction.
Yes. So, when we're talking about reconnecting with that intuition, getting our compass to calm down and settle down, part of it is to first just stop spinning. Like stop
Mhm.
making your person move in this monotonous circle in the same spot. I, there's so many people that keep trying the same thing over and over and over again because they're determined to make it work for them and for their life and in the relationships that they have. They're determined for this particular outlook to occur. And again, that is really looking into the future and not following where your awareness is taking you now. Um, and again, I want to stress that there's a difference between like trying to see where you're going to end up versus planning and creating a future for yourself. There's a big difference there. Um,
Mhm.
and part of that is the motion that you're doing. So if you're just constantly spinning in a circle and, hoping that when you stop, you're going to be pointing north, it's not going to work very well.
I think it also needs to be said that you can't navigate your life using someone else's compass because they're calibrated differently. And if
Yes.
you do that, you're going to find yourself in some crazy territory that just doesn't feel right and you're going to feel out of place. And
Oh,
so
yes.
if you're really prioritizing those relationships and certain ways of doing things and certain ways of getting to where you want to be, and you're using someone else's compass without stopping to check in with your own, it's going to lead you off course. And that's really where our intuition comes in is it's saying, that worked for them, but that's not how I'm wired. That's not how I'm designed. So I need to figure out, look at what they're doing and get the inspiration and figure out what resonates and feels good and feels like you, and modify it and create your own way using your own compass.
Oh, yes. When we talk about healing mental illness and going through our mental wellness journeys, especially from a spiritual standpoint, it is important for us to note that no two paths are alike. Everyone has a different reason for needing mental wellness in their lives. Everyone walks a different spiritual path. And I don't care if your path is Abrahamic or not. Our paths are all individual and we all have our individual ways of connecting with spirit and working with the different tools that we have. And those are each designed by us for us. And no two paths are going to look the same. So And it's easy for us to want our compass to look like someone else's, especially in this world where socially there is so much forced into our faces. And it is, marketing is designed to make us want things. Oh, I want to look like that, or I want to have that. I need to be this person, especially in the age of content creators. The amount of people that I know that suddenly want to become content creators, and that is a very like niche environment. It's a very hard thing to do. Their compass is not the same as your compass. Now, does that mean that you're not going to be a content creator? No. But that does mean that you have your own individual path to walk, and it is not going to look anything like that other person's whatsoever. It may look like you showcasing something else that you do versus a person that is, putting on makeup for a living. They're so vastly different, but you can still maintain your own goal. So don't compare your compass to others and don't wish your compass was shinier. If you wish your compass was shinier, maybe you should shine it up a little bit, get out a cloth and like clean it up and get out of this little clumpy energy to really allow yourself to see where your true north is pointing.
So, content creators are also called influencers. And I think that that's like an important point to note because influencing is the power to indirectly affect change um, with someone or something, right? And a lot of us want this sense of control to give us safety, especially people that have gone through adverse experiences. Um, so, this idea of influencing others around us is easy to get caught up in, but we have to recognize that each of us has our own power of choice. And no matter how hard we try, it's like the old adage goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So instead of trying to influence them to change their behaviors, be the role model, set
Yes.
examples, be the inspiration instead.
I like that. I like how you use the term role models there because absolutely. And I just keep seeing in that a person who's able to kind of like be a role model to themselves. Someone that is determined to follow their own destiny, carve their own path, and step in footsteps that haven't been stepped in before. We can look at another person and say, I really enjoy who you are, what you're doing, and I can feel that there is something akin to me. But then again, there comes that understanding, that need of uh individuality, and also individuation. And those are two different things. I'll put the definitions in the comments for anybody who's
Talk about this
interested.
in the Soul Ascension Code, but it's very much that concept of becoming that mother and that father, embodying those traits and speaking to yourself in that kind, compassionate, motherly way, and giving yourself that sense of structure and what's the word I'm looking for the divine masculine? Help me out.
Oh,
Not I hate the word discipline, so I don't want to
structure.
use that. Yeah, it's that structure and that encouragement to keep going and persevere.
Yes, yes. I always see, and I know I've said this before, but I always see the divine masculine as like a planner, like a paper planner that you use to organize all of your thoughts and where everything is going, what goes where, when you have to do things. Because it takes all of this divine feminine energy and it allows us to understand where it is going to go. And that's part of our intuitive build also. Our intuition is driven by the divine feminine, by all of this etheric power and spiritual energy that is flowing through us. I often relate this to the Druidic Awen, which is seen as, for those of you who play D&D, bardic inspiration. Um, And it gives you this little bit of oomph, this little bit of like extra kick, and allows you to have this power, have this creative flow in being. And the divine masculine is how you separate that to make it work in your life.
Absolutely. I always look at it as I'm going to use the closet analogy because that's my favorite one for chaos. So the divine feminine has the idea and the vision, right, for how the things need to be set up to flow for everybody's needs, right? And the divine masculine comes in and builds the closet system that the divine feminine visualizes, right? And gives it tangible, grounded structure and form so that the vision, the concept, the ideas can come to life and they work together. Can't have one without the other.
I like that. I like your analogy there. And absolutely, you can't have one without the other. That's just how they go hand in hand. Um, when we see too much of the divine feminine, that's when we start to see lots of spiraling. We see lots of you're spinning. That's the spinning compass right there. Because you're just trying to find where that true north is going.
It's the I've pulled everything out of the closet and it is everywhere on the floor and I don't know where to start. That's
Yes.
that's heavy on the divine feminine.
Yes, absolutely. It's those moments where you're like, I want to clean everything, and suddenly your house is four times messier than it was before.
Yep, absolutely.
And the divine masculine is the one who's like, okay, but we have to get to the floor now.
Yeah, that's where the structure comes in, right? And it's like breaking it down into tangible steps to make it seem possible.
Yes. So there's a lot of ways that you can build your intuition after you've kind of like lost connection with. And I was going to say something else, but my brain has totally shifted sides. So it's the disconnection of you from your intuition, from that inner voice. Some people call it the higher self. It's also the true north. It is that inner soul compass. And there's a lot of ways that you can rebuild it. The most common ways that you'll hear from people will be like meditation, breath work exercises. For those of you in the witchy community, you will hear people say that you want to work with divination a lot and, try to get in touch with cards or pendulum work. And really, at the basis of it, it is about coming back to that personal awareness and stepping back in. So if you don't identify with any of those things, oftentimes I will hear people say all of the time that they want to build their intuition, but they're not really into like meditating is really hard. They always fall asleep, which by the way, that's a great thing, actually. That's for a different episode though. And that breath work doesn't really work for them. And there's a lot of people who aren't into trying to get into divination. So in trying to get in touch with your intuition, sometimes it's as easy as going for a walk in the woods and just listening to the things that are around you, listening to what's inside of you, and take some time every so often to do that. And you'll notice that those sounds get louder. You can start to identify them, and suddenly you're no longer worried about where your compass is going, and you're just following that true north path as you walk. And then we can start to adapt that into other parts of our lives too. What are some ways that you think people can build their intuition also?
So, whenever I teach the intuition and inner voice course, I always focus on the body first because the body always knows. If you think about it, how many times have you had a like a lump in your throat kind of feeling or like a chest cold whenever you've been withholding your thoughts on a matter, right? And you're not speaking up. So then all of a sudden, you have physically manifested a reason to not speak up. Our body always knows the answers. And it's something that I teach a lot of my clients is really learning to reconnect with their body in different ways. Because when I ask a yes or no question, your throat is automatically going to start moving into the position as if it was going to say yes or if it was going to say no. You know, if you look at body language, our body is leaning in whenever it's in agreement and it's immediately leaning out. Our feet positionings and conversations, if we're ready to exit that conversation, one of our feet are going to turn outwards towards our exit, right? Our body knows the answers. It's just that we've been taught to stop listening and to conform to other expectations, whether it's society or it's our parents or it's our work, whatever it is, but we've been taught to conform and ignore that. So I always start with teaching several different ways to really reconnect with the body and notice the body's responses because it's going to tell you.
Oh, absolutely. It absolutely is going to tell you. We see it in a big thing in people right now is dehydration. Just to hit something very, very specific in this, it's a common thing now that we're all reminding each other to drink the wet stuff, have the water, because we're forgetting it and how quick our society moves, how we're always looking for that up there next motion. And people have forgotten how important it is to have water in their bodies. But we have people that are complaining about having constant dry mouth, having dry skin. There's a lot more chronic pain that's happening. And I'm not saying that everything is caused by water. But I am saying that if you start listening to your body and you notice, oh, well, when I stand up, I'm like really creaky, like the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz, and maybe I need some oil. Well, the water is the body's oil. That is our force, our tool of joint lubrication. And so all of this stiffness, if you sit there and you take a second, the first thing you're going to do is go, I need to drink some water. Because that's the first thing that your body is telling you that it needs. So, yeah, taking a look inside your body and just sitting there and getting back in tune with it will help to build that intuition so immensely.
Absolutely. And if breath work and meditation aren't your jam, especially my fellow ADHDers, look at ecstatic dance and other like somatic type of practices that allow you to really just be present with your body. That's one of the things that I always start with whenever I go to do a meditation is I focus on the feelings in my body and I will hold that focus in my body until I can literally feel the pulse in my feet because it's not something we typically notice, right? So I try to shift my focus so that I can actually feel the pulse in the blood going through my entire body. And that's when I'm able to really like be in that space where I can hear my inner voice crystal clear. Um, and simple things like that can help tremendously, especially with just moving energy. Now, if you've ever been in my house or put cameras in my house, you will know that I also just randomly like sing like sounds. It's not even words, it's just sounds, whatever sound needs to be moved out of my body. Sometimes it sounds like I'm speaking in tongues. It's okay. But, it's just really trying to like reconnect with that body and be present in that moment and get that stuck energy out of my body so that I can clear out that confusion and tap back into my intuition.
Oh yes, my house is very, very similar. I have two children. My house is always in motion, even when it's stagnant. But this is for, my fellow moms who have multiple children, difficult children who also maybe have ADHD or a neurodivergence, or dads. You know, it's very easy for us to get stuck in these patterns because there's always something left to be done. And I like that you bring up that verbal release of things because it helps, like you said, to kind of like jolt to the energy around you and keep things in a forward motion. Music is a fantastic tool to keep the flow of things and to disrupt energetic stagnancy. We talk about that in spirituality and in for those witchy people also, you know, we talk about drumming. We talk about the different ways to move our body. I love that you brought up ecstatic dance because it is one of the most profound experiences I have ever had that did open me back up to my intuitive self. The first time I went to an ecstatic dance, I was going through a very interesting time of my life, and I was looking for that reconnection to intuition. And I was looking for a little bit of a release that fully allowed me to push out emotion and make these emotions move through me more successfully. Because this can happen in your emotions too. It's not just your physical world. This can happen in your emotions. As a person who lives with anxiety, this is often something that increases our anxiety, and goes along that idea of, you know, unresolved trauma really stagnates that internal voice and that true north directive. So doing things like ecstatic dance, singing through the house, or even just doing a little bit more creative play with your kids while you're doing things in the house helps to break up all of that clumpiness and bring forth this new energy. You know, typically after people do this, they are like, I really, really loved that. Like, I haven't felt that great in ages. And part of that's because you've been stuck in this not able to move with intuition. It doesn't have to be one or the other. If you move with your true north, you don't live in that clumpiness and you can reset as needed.
Absolutely. So one of the ways my intuition often speaks to me is this impulse to pick up a book. I'll just kind of like be drawn to a random book. And sometimes I get the urge to write notes and stick them in my books. And I never remember what book I've stuck a note in, but it never fails. Usually, since I started doing this, I will just kind of be drawn to a book. So we were talking about moving energy, right? And so I have this book that I absolutely love, and it's called Clearing Emotional Clutter by Donald Altman. And I had written a note to myself and stuck it in chapter 11. Chapter 11 says, change the distraction channel to find clarity. And this chapter itself focuses on like clearing the distractions in order to really tap back into yourself and what you need, right? And talking about not being present and just kind of mindlessly scrolling phones and like engaging in technology and losing track of time and how to stop that, right? So, the note that I wrote says, you will find this when you need it most. I love you, just in case you forgot. And then there's a sticker in here that says, hey, no bad vibes needed. You are competent and capable. You are a bit of a badass. And then the note says, think about just how much you've learned over the course of your life. If that isn't proof that you can do things that you've never done before, I don't know what is. Imposter syndrome is just the ego's growing pains as it stretches to encompass this new thing. So that is a little message from my intuition to y'all. I hope you enjoy.
I like that. I like that. I think that one, I love that you have this practice, and I feel like more people should put notes in books for
Hmm.
lots of reasons. But I love that was the note that you put in instead of it being like just a typical reminder of what you're learning. It was like a message to future you to keep going in this reset, you know? Because I feel like we all go through these moments of slumpiness over and over and over again. You know, life is cyclical. And so we're always going to need that reset, and working with your intuition, building your intuition and leaving yourself little clues like that. I love that so much. It helps us to keep our intuition open. And so when we have a clumpy moment and we're like, okay, I need this refresher. We don't often know that we need it until we see it, but you know, leaving yourself little notes or putting things up on the wall helps so much to keep that moving through within you.
And I tend to give away books too when I encounter someone that needs it. So it doesn't always mean that the notes are going to go to me. When I write notes, I tend to just grab cards and just jot whatever comes to mind. And then I have the notes closed. So then I just kind of grab a random book and stick a random note in there. So it's not like it's coordinated based off of the topic. It's just there.
Oh, right. And you know, I think that that's also part of that intuitive living because, you know, you're just following what your forward motion is doing. You're following what that inner voice is doing, and someone may need it. You know, that's the same thing that we use in divination.
Hmm. Absolutely. So like those random urges that you have to pick up that thing or to open up your messages and scroll to look for someone or something, those are all ways that our intuition speaks to us too. So pay attention to those little impulses and weird little desires that pop up because you never know when it's gonna come in handy.
Right, exactly. Absolutely. Leave yourself little notes. Be kind to yourself. Do all of those things that you're just called to do. Maybe not all of them because, you know, discernment, intrusive thoughts versus
Mhm.
intuition.
Yes.
But you know, whatever is not harmful that is pushing you towards that true north, dive into it. Like just do it. I have come to learn that part of my intuitive nature, um, is allowing my divine feminine to show itself through the way that I express myself as a human and how I show up into the world. That has been part of my purpose for a really long time. It has gotten me some flack in a lot of ways, and it definitely does not mesh with people who show up more in the divine masculine sense. But because I do that, and I love this because it's drawing me toward your word for 2025. Do you want to tell them what your word for 2025 was?
Oh, absolutely. So my word for 2025 is freedom. Um, and as I was kind of like thinking about just where I'm at and where I want to go, I was kind of throwing an inner temper tantrum, if I'm being honest. And I was like, you know what? I'm fed up. I'm done with all these limitations. I'm done with all these restrictions. I have the freedom to choose, and I will continue to choose. And all of these limitations that I've made up in my head are done. I'm not choosing them anymore. So I'm just like, universe, go ahead. Whatever you've got to throw at me, I'm ready because I'm not choosing that. I have
Yes.
freedom.
Yes. And you know, it is. It's we talked about this too, you know, what is the freedom other than, you know, it's the freedom of choice.
Hmm.
Being able to determine where you're going, what you're doing, who you are. And in choosing that in the way that I show up and letting that divine feminine through, because I grew up with a very much it's okay to be kind of divine feminine in the way you show up to the world, but there was always a but. There was always this other side of it. And it led me down this path of like self-judgment. It led me down this path of internalizing anger and internalizing possibility. And for those of you who don't know what I mean by internalizing possibility, that is kind of like having this expectation that everyone is always judging you. Most of us have a little bit of emotional connection. Some of us have full-blown trauma connected to the way that we show up in the world, with how we dress, how we're put together, how our hair is done, how our makeup is done. And for me, it was very much about the freedom to break free of that and let my divine feminine show out through my physical appearance, because my divine masculine, that's not where it needed to be. It needed to be in all of the other areas of my life, and that needed to be a sense of freedom for myself. But I would not have known that if I didn't sit and listen with my intuition and sit and listen with who I needed to show up for myself in order for myself to be happy and be fulfilled and not feel stuck in this cycle of judgment and condescending thought.
So duality kind of throws humans off, right? Because we tend to think of it as a this or a that, but really it's just a spectrum. And, for a very long time, society has kind of like polarized that spectrum. So you have toxic masculinity and then you have toxic femininity, where the feminine side is expected to placate and please and tend to everybody else's needs and not her own, right? And to be seen and not heard and all of those things, right? But there's a spectrum that isn't femininity. That's the absolute extreme side of it. And when we really do the work and do the healing and reconnect with who we are, you'll find that you're somewhere closer to the center where you're able to balance both that masculine and that feminine energy and allow it to be cohesive and work together like it was designed to do, regardless of gender.
Yes. Yes. And yeah, I also want to talk about that when we talk about divine feminine and divine masculine. It really has nothing to do with gender at all
No.
whatsoever.
No, it's just
It's about
positive
that
versus
balance.
negative energy, it's just two different sides of energy that is being expressed and brought together to make something exist. Like, atoms in the sense of like science, right? And chemistry need both protons and neutrons and electrons to all like be able to form bonds with each other to create physical tangible things. Um, and it causes all kinds of chaos if you are only holding on to electrons or only holding on to protons, right?
Oh yeah.
Now, I'm not a chemistry major, so don't take me in a very, very literal sense. I'm using this as a metaphor. Um, but my point is you need both to create the world around you. And if we try to say that only one thing is good or only one thing is me, then you're not able to move and get where you need to be. You're not able to create what you want to create, and you're just kind of stuck and half complete.
Yes. Yes. It's two halves of a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons why I like to describe the divine feminine in the way that I do and relate it to that idea of Awen, because it is like the creative force of the universe. And the other half of that is, well, what do you do with the creative force of the universe? Because I'm drawn to, since this is trauma talk, let's compare it to mental illness. I'm going to compare it to bipolar, because there are two drastic large extremes and there's a period of balance typically that we see. This isn't all scenarios, so if this isn't what you know it to be or your personal experience with it, that is fine. But there are types that show this huge pendulum swing One side goes all the way up into this beautiful happiness. They're hyper fixated. You're moving very strongly into uh, your passions. I'm going to use air quotes there because it quickly devolves into obsession because you're only focused on this one part. Now, that's an oversimplification of bipolar disorder, but then it swings over to the other side and you go into your manic state or you go into your depressive state. And the depressive state is, well, I can't do anything. I am, you shut down, your body is in an override kind of a state. You are in a very, very dark place, typically cannot move your way out of it. And there is this balance between the two because we have to experience our negative emotions. We also have to experience our positive emotions and follow these ideas and these dreams. And finding the balance between the two is where that lies. And that's also where we find that we're the least clumpy in our energetic exchange.
I have a perfect metaphor for this.
Yes, please.
Okay, so it's like having all of the ingredients but no recipe, or only having a recipe with no ingredients. Neither one of those can allow you to make dinner.
Yes.
So you have to have both. You have to have the structure in order to actually make the meal, and you have to
Yes.
have the ingredients. And if that isn't like the perfect way to show how divine feminine and masculine and those two opposites work together, I don't know what it is.
Oh, right, exactly. That is. It's absolutely perfect. And I can actually think of all of the times when I was learning how to cook and when I was learning how to put things together like that, you know, we also see it in art. It falls apart. You're not able to do it, or the food is bland and nasty. Or thinking about it in the ways of like baking. Well, what if you didn't put the as one of my favorite content creators calls it, the floof powder in your bread or your cake or your cookies, and then they're just flats and they're not very good. They're very, very boring, not exciting, and you're like, "Aw." Is what comes to my mind with that. I really like that analogy.
Yeah, I mean, there's some creative people that break my brain that don't need a recipe, but they're still applying structure. There's still a system that goes into creating that meal, even if it isn't as rigid as a very detailed recipe that has very clear step-by-step instructions, you know? There's still a system, there's still an order, and it's what makes that meal. So even if you're saying, "Oh, well, I don't ever use recipes, I don't need them," there's still structure, you know? And again, it comes back to that spectrum where both of them move in harmony and you're somewhere towards the middle.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And yeah, once we move through this clumpy energy, then it'll be easier for you to deal with your family. Holidays haven't started quite yet. In fact, being that this is Friday, some of you are probably beginning your travels now or over the next couple of days. And just remember that if you take this information, if you understand that this is where you need to create, your next plan to get out of the clumpy, or to even just make things a little bit easier for you, because when we're going into the ideas of like unresolved trauma and not being able to hear your intuition and feeling clumpy, often this leads to hypervigilance, which increases your anxiety. It's a whole downward trickle of effects that it has. And if if we can take a second in those moments of hypervigilance to find ourselves, understand what our balance is, use a pen and paper, I'm a big fan of writing things down. I know some people kind of feel embarrassed that they need to write down their feelings to work them out, but don't be embarrassed by that. You know, that is part of the duality of it. You're feeling your feelings. That's one part. The balance is getting them out. And that's part of bottling up your emotions, which throws you into this hypervigilance and anxietal type of a field also. So the other half of that, that balance, getting out of the clumpy is to get them out. And oftentimes we find it more embarrassing to bring it up to another person, or we feel shame in bringing it up to another person. So write it down. And as you write it down, work out how you would move through it and create a map for yourself. And this map is going to be your compass, how you're following your intuitive true north to get to your end goal.
I love that you said that. Okay, so sorry, quick plug because
Yes, please.
I have the thing. I have already worked out the thing.
Yes.
February 2nd will be when I launch the free workshop called Inner Inventory. And it helps you really figure out what those directions are and gives you that map to figure out where you're going and what your new choices are, what you want to change, all of that. Because oftentimes we know we want to change, but we don't even know where to start. It's like spinning around looking at all of the clothes all over the floor, and you need that structure to kind of help you dial in on where to start. And that's exactly what that does.
I keep seeing like you're gonna like pull people into their emotional closets and you all are just gonna start throwing things out.
Look, you know that my favorite thing when it comes to healing and self-discovery is using the house metaphor. So, like,
Yes.
I have literally designed all of these workshops based off of that. The Foundations of You is the first in the series, and I'm literally helping everyone discover their foundations, their values, their needs, their core beliefs, all of that. And then the boundaries, I'm like, oh, it's your exterior walls. Like, if you don't have exterior walls, you have nothing else to build on and anything can come in. And like I said, I think it was a couple episodes, boundaries are to protect the integrity of you, right? So,
Yes.
so then the third in the series is intuition and inner voice, which is why I'm like, oh, I got this. I love this topic. Let's talk about it,
Oh,
And
I think
then
that's fantastic. You know, and do you already have that available on your website or is it like to be found soon?
it will be going live January 6th. So the quiz that you and I kind of like fleshed out together, that actually is going to be on the website on January 6th because, holidays. Um, and our soft launch is February through March. Um, and I think the first triggers workshop, transforming triggers, is which is after intuition. That one hits in April or May. I don't have my calendar in front of me. So it's all going to be rolled out come, new year, new me. It's new year, new direction. Let's do this.
I love that. And I'm just plugging that into the comments now. That way, people can check it out as soon as you get it up and see where that's going to go because I am super excited for that. Yeah, we put together that quiz and it was so much fun. And the answers help so much for not only you to know where to begin helping people, but for people to really see in their current awareness just how far they've made it on their path. You
Mhm.
know, I volunteer with some of the mental wellness organizations in the United States, and one of my favorite things in some of the support groups is that we go over the stages of the mental wellness healing journey. And it is so interesting to see how people perk up when they realize they're out of crisis and they're finally in this little box where they can begin. And not to put people in a box, but you've moved from one box to another. You've
Mhm.
graduated boxes. Your house is getting bigger, to use Ashley's metaphor there. And you
Here
begin
for it.
coping. You begin actually putting your tools to use, and you are aware of when you're about to go through mental health shifts. You're aware of when you're about to experience a meltdown or maybe even feeling where crisis may be. And seeing people really find their way into this new house is so beautiful. So I'm excited to see how people react to this evaluation or this assessment you've made.
Absolutely. It's so much fun to, look back with my clients and, as they're moving through different things, I'm like, a year ago, this was like so far beyond your awareness. Like you have come so far. And really just helping them see how much they've leveled up. Because when you're in the thick of it, you're just kind of like taking one step at a time. You haven't taken a chance to stop, pause, and look back behind you to see that you've climbed the dang mountain. You're only 10 feet from the peak.
Oh, I did not realize my microphone was muted. I apologize, everyone.
I was like, did I
Um,
lose you again?
but no, it's yes, you have come so much further than you think you have every single time. Like it doesn't matter when you are looking at your progress. You have come so far from somewhere. You have learned so much, you've experienced so much more, and right now, and it's about when we get out of this clumpy energy, it's about seeing where your peak is and evaluating how close you are. I'm super excited about that. We are coming up on our hour. If there was one large takeaway you wanted people to take away from this episode, what would it be?
Take time to reconnect with your compass and figure out, where your north is pointing. And don't be afraid to follow it and break out of the mainstream and do things your way. That's the fun of it, isn't it? Get to play with
Oh yeah,
life.
it absolutely is. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sitting down with me for this episode. This has been fantastic. I can't wait to see how this resonates with people, and how it shows up over the next couple of weeks as we get into the new year. And the next time we sit down for trauma talk, it will be after the first of the year.
Absolutely. Actually, next time we sit down, I will have everything launched in line.
Yes,
I will
yes,
be
I am so
actively
excited.
doing the plans.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm so excited to see where this goes and to see how it affects all of the people around us. And I'm excited to see the shift that it will bring. But I will see you in the new year, and I hope you have amazing holidays. I think we actually have one more episode left, but it's the roundtable, which will be on in just a few moments.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.